What's up, guys? Welcome to another Sunday. Like I said, this week was a very busy week. I had to cancel one of my doctor's appointments because the medication I was taking for it, I think I've been getting an allergic reaction to. It kind of sucked. We had time to do toy hunts, but it wasn't a lot of time. And like I said, we were pretty busy. I did get a lot of mail in, so the next mailbox is probably just going to be a Super 7 mailbox or a G.I. Joe classified mailbox. There is a lot of G.I. Joe classifieds coming in within the next couple months. Well, no, not months. Couple weeks. The next 3 weeks. I am waiting for one more Super 7 box. I have 3 in already. As far as G.I. Joe classifieds go, literally I have, I think, 5 or 6 stuff already in. They've literally been pushing it out. If you haven't been following G.I. Joe or Hasbro posts, they finally, couple of days ago, launched the Ghost Viper as a Walmart exclusive. Fortunately, here in Hawaii, the pre-sale orders went up at 4 in the morning. By the time I woke up, it was all sold out. From what I hear, it was a pretty fast sellout. However, Thursday, G.I. Joe Classified Hasbro Pulse put up Pythona from Cobra La as a pre-order. Unfortunately, it's only for premium members for now. I believe in a couple weeks, maybe early November, it's gonna be on sale for everybody. Pythona looks great. Ghost Viper looks great. So I was not going to pick up Lifeline. I'm not a huge fan of Lifeline. I am a huge fan of the character in the cartoon. The cartoon and the comics are definitely different when it comes to Lifeline. Cartoon Lifeline was a pacifist so he didn't carry any weapons at all. So because of that, he was in the cartoons very limited. Which I completely understand. I do want Big Lob. Now I want Lifeline. I'm not getting Hit and Run. I'm not getting Mole Rat version 2. I am getting the Night Viper. As far as the name only reveals and the render reveals, I already have the Cobra Hiss. The only reason I would want the Arctic Hiss is because I think the driver looks cool. And instead of the gun turret, it's a missile launcher turret. But I don't think it makes sense. They're basically taking the damn Stinger missile pod and putting it on a Hiss tank. When I like and understand putting it on the G.I. Joe porta potty. I wish the Cobra porta potty did that. But I've never liked vehicles that launched missiles when the driver or the gunner was right at the bottom of the missile. I mean, let's face it just does not work. No price, but I'm figuring it will probably be $250. And it will be a made to order, so they're not making a lot of these. It will only be made if you order it. I do want Zap. The Royal Guard for the Cobra La, I honestly, it's a deluxe. It comes with 4 heads. The Cobra La and insane, well, the Cobra Trooper, or not Cobra, the Royal Guard, an Elite Royal Guard, and 2 Cobra La hits. That's basically Cobra Commanders. Well, it looks like Cobra Commander before, when he was part of the Cobra La. It also has the poles that held Cobra Commander, the battle axe that they had, wings, and the wrist blades. I do think I will need 2 of those. Just to have 2 different versions. I haven't seen the Star Wars things. But there's not much more black figures I can honestly get or I want. Maybe more Sith, but I'm only buying certain Sith. Like I said, I'm still trying to figure out what and who exactly I want for my female shelf, which is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. I know I want Supergirl, and I know I want the Pink Ranger, Amy Jo Johnson. I'm thinking Eliza Dushku, Faith from Buffy. But the stuff I'm actually finding online is pretty insane. Even if it's even if it doesn't fit, there is stuff I might want to collect or pick up. I forgot they made characters for heroes. I forgot they made Dark Angel characters. So I'm literally going back and trying to go through cartoons, movies, TVs, and trying to, even comics, and trying to find toys that they actually made of figures that I might want. But at the same time, there are still a lot of things out there that I want. Which brings me to today. Like I said, I have a mailbox. I'm waiting on one more Super 7. Then we'll do a Super 7 mailbox. I have a G.I. Joe mailbox, the classifieds. There are still things I need to order. However, today, something completely special and insane, sort of, as we go back in time. And I got 4 retro figures for you. And hopefully, this brings out some nostalgia for you. 2 figures pre-owned out of the box. 2 figures still carded. And to me, it is crazy. So let's start off with one of the unboxed figures or uncarded figures. And I know a lot of you will not know this figure or this toy. Not only because it's old, but because it was a very cult following. I think so. I'm pretty sure they made a comic, and I think it was only one issue, maybe 2 or 3, but I don't think it went further than that. They did have a cartoon for the series. However, I think it was only 13 episodes, like most of the one-season cartoons that never take off. But they made over a dozen toys. And when I saw it, I wanted one. I actually got maybe 3, maybe 4 of these toys. Unfortunately, they were all the good guys. Not one was the bad. What? I think I had maybe one bad guy. And the problem with these toys were, 1, they were small. 2, in order to play with them, you need to use a string and literally stretch it across. Good thing is they mostly came with their own strings or an actual belt. And if you haven't figured it out, I'm talking about Sky Commanders. So I did get into the cartoon. Unfortunately, it was after the toys. I just thought it was a very interesting and cool idea at the time. Never seen anything like it. But then again, I honestly thought air raiders was a very cool and interesting idea. And it was. For most of you who don't know what air raiders is, they made a cartoon. They made a cartoon. I think it was only 5 episodes. It is very hard to find. They made 1 comic book. Again, they made over a dozen different toys. The figures were this small. The vehicles was a pretty nice size. The thing is, they came with a pump. You insert the vehicle, hit the pump. The vehicle would literally fly because of the wind pressure. You could take the missiles, put it into the pump, same thing. It was a unique idea at the time. Nobody has ever did it or redid it. And Sky Commanders was pretty much the same. Only did it once. Nobody's rebooted it. Nobody's redid it. So the story of Sky Commanders is basically a meteor crashes into Earth. It literally dissolves into our ocean and enters the ground and into our lava, creates a huge new island. The island is just full of mountains, and the good guys and bad guys enter the mountain to pick up minerals from the meteorite that crashed to try and create a new energy source and new weapons. So normally you would take a string, attach it to one stuff, attach it to the other, and it will just slide down. I forget who the heroes was. I remember, so most of the characters came with what is some kind of a machine that they could slide on. It was usually a backpack. The hero commander had a backpack that came up, that was like a crane, came out, and it had kind of a roller on it. My favorite hero literally was stuck in a what looked like a phone booth, but it looked cool to me. A one-person rocket. There was a huge base for it that you could attach stuff from it. It was only the hero's base, which was a ship, an airplane that literally landed and you could stretch apart, creating platforms, walls, and whatnot. They did have vehicles that rode on belts that were, again, insane. A lot of it, I think some of the vehicles were motorized. But the leader of the villains was this guy, General Plague. So as you can see, he has a wrist, I guess a wrist lock. It has a hook. There is a thread that goes into his back that literally wraps around this thing. It is literally a normal 3.75 G.I. Joe is probably about that tall. So you can see how small this was. Came with this backpack, 2 lasers on top. You could put either a string into there to slide it down, make it fly. This is supposed to be able to open up to grab somebody. Definitely well used. This went onto the character. I am pretty sure there might be some episodes or some stuff on YouTube about these guys. I know the theme song for the cartoon is on YouTube, as well as several commercials. But I honestly needed to get General Plague for my villain collection. The character in the cartoon was an evil general. And I mean, it was literally like the good guys were all friends and they were treated each other with respect, with friendship. This guy just treated all his troops like troops. And basically demanded respect from all of them, which, I mean, he was General Plague. And it felt like everything he touched was going to die. He didn't have that superpower though, but that's what he wanted the minerals for, to create a super weapon to kill off a lot of people, try and be wealthy and whatnot. The cartoon actually was so much more better than the toys itself, because a lot of times they would get stuck mid-slide, where the cartoons just was all mechanical. So besides that, let's go with one of the carded characters. Again, this is from a Saturday morning cartoon that was ahead of its time in ideas. It's insane how crazy toys and cartoons was back then to what it is today. It seems like back then they were willing to take more risk and do insane things. This was not a cartoon. This was a live action Saturday morning assault. Literally, it was ahead of its time. Captain Power and the Soldiers of the Future. Soldiers of Fortune. Thinking 18. So the series took place after the Earth was destroyed. The main villain used robots. And he had two main officer robots and other robots. Basically, Skynet was trying to cleanse what's left of the human race. Very hard to find water, very hard to find food. Most of the buildings destroyed, everybody living underground and trying to stay alive. There was just one specific unit that tried to defend and stop the evil from this planet, led by Captain Power. There was a pilot, there was a ground unit called Tank, an aerial unit, and a scout. Now, being live action was the crazy part. That's what made it interesting. However, if you actually had the spaceship of either the evil side or the good side, or the tank toys, it was so the vehicle toys could shoot an infrared laser beam that not only interacted with the other bigger toys, the vehicle toys, but interacted with the cartoon or the live action series as well as the DVDs. So of course the live action series, the story never changed. I think the DVD things happened if you shot the DVD TV screen with the toys, where the villains or the heroes kind of felt it. But I did get the major villain, Lord Dread. Again, a very small toy. Comes with a little sword, parts cybernetic. So there was the transformation stand. So the this was basically to power up the transformation. It's been a while since I watched the cartoon. They had the airplane, the villain airplane, a laser gun. Talks about how you can shoot your TV. So out of all of them, I like the two generals. Sauron and Blastar. Then this is the leader, Captain Power. I believe that's Tank Ellis. And I forget. Major Hawk Masterson. And then, of course, like I said, they had two more characters. The pilot that piloted the ship, and a chameleon scout. It's insane that it's this small of a figure and they did that great of a detail. Yes, I'm keeping him carded. Mattel made these. There is a little file for the character. I do miss watching the cartoon or the live action series. There is a lot of cartoons and live action series I actually miss watching. That's why I'm trying to collect DVDs. So, moving on to my final unboxed character. Again, pre-owned, because it's pretty hard to find him still carded for a good price. A lot of these carded old school toys are literally over $100. There are a lot of toys I personally don't care if it's carded, because I'm just gonna take it out. There are a few characters that I'm keeping carded. This one, I'm sure most of you remember. It wasn't a Saturday morning cartoon. It was a cartoon that you came home after school to watch. The weird part is a lot of people didn't watch cartoons after school. But there were some great cartoons. Remember Brave Star? I definitely need a Tex Hex. Apparently Mondo announced either yesterday or today for Comic-Con, or Thursday or Friday for New York Comic-Con, that they will be doing Brave Star, which is crazy. Mondo is very expensive though, but the work they put into characters is worth it. It is very hard to find a complete version of Tex Hex, Brave Star, or any other character from the series. And honestly, finding them separately is very expensive. You can still find a complete certain characters still in box. Again, they are very, very expensive. But the cartoon I'm talking about, I think was 1993. Nah, it had to be like 98. Somewhere around there. So it was basically cops versus criminals. The series was called Central Organization of Police Specialists, C.O.P.S. The theme song kind of gets stuck in your head for the series. It was more than one season. I think it was 2 seasons. It was more than 25 episodes. I think it was somewhere in the 30 or 40s. I do think you can find the cartoon on DVD, the entire collection. They also made comic books for the series. Unfortunately, when the toys came out, they were pretty big. And there was a lot of characters I wanted, but to get a certain amount of characters, I couldn't. I don't remember. I don't think I had the main character, which was Bulletproof Vest, a FBI agent who was gunned down. They've saved his life, but they literally had to input a bulletproof vest on him, and it was literally a metal vest. There was the street cop long arm, which had I wouldn't say a wristband, but some kind of wrist that shot out a handcuff, just one, attached to a chain that was attached. It was crazy. I do remember Mace, which was basically their one-man SWAT team. Barricade, which was literally, he came with what looked like a rocket launcher, but the end was basically a huge padded machinery that just shot out to destroy things. My favorite guy was I forget what his name was, but he was the dog handler, Bowser. And it was not a normal dog. He had a mechanical dog named Blight with a siren on his back. But Blight had its own personality. It was great. They had a pilot, a bullseye for a helicopter that was unique. Well, most of the vehicles was unique. It was a very futuristic. Sundown, which was basically a sheriff, quick draw sheriff. Highway, which was supposed to be their highway patrolman on a motorcycle, but he came with a hovercraft. The villains were all unique as well. So they had Berserker, who was the nephew of the main the main villain, and he just was stupid. But his best friend Turbo was the vehicle driver. They had Nightshade, which was their thief. The main character for the villain side had a bodyguard. The bodyguard was cool. I don't know how he existed though. His name was Buttons McBoom Boom. And he would open up his suit, and within his chest and stomach was 2 Gatling guns which would come down and just shoot up everything. So it never really made sense, but you never really thought about it. They actually had a mad scientist, Dr. Bad Vibes, that half his head was gone. You could see his brain in a glass tube, which was insane for a kid show. And he came with Buzz Off, a little robot that literally had no hands. Everything was just two bladed buzzsaws. No legs, just rollers would roll around. It was a very, very futuristic, out there cops and robbers. They did add in more cops, and they did add in more villains. I think in season 3, but it didn't go that far after that. As far as the toys went, they actually made almost everybody. Almost. I think they just didn't make the women. But I think the idea was that it was supposed to be a boys' cartoon and nobody would play with the women. I think they made Misdemeanor, which was the muscle-bound woman of the villains. I can't remember. I do know they did not make the computer specialist for the cops mainframe. I also know they didn't make Nightshade. Like I said, I only had, I believe, Bowser and Blitz, because I wanted Blitz, and Bowser looked pretty cool. Kind of reminded me of Mutt and Junkyard from G.I. Joe. And I think I had one other hero character. I just can't remember who it was. I don't think I had any of the villains. Although I wanted the villains. I mean, Buttons McBoom Boom was insane. Bad Vibes looked crazy. However, I finally got the big man, Big Boss. And yes, his buttons are supposed to be police officer badges of officers that they literally supposedly killed. So it was a very dark series. And thankfully, he came complete. Hopefully I can stand it. It's gonna take a bit, I guess, with his pet weasel. I forget who or what he called it, but he also had a butler that was named Weasel. So the insane part of the toys that wasn't part of the cartoons is that every character came with an oversized weapon. And if you grew up as a kid, you remember the little paper things with the black circle that would pop if you hit it with a hammer. These things, you could insert those papers into it, and there was a little thing that you, like a little lever that you could pull out, and you can see that little circle in there, and pop. Every character had a huge weapon. And to me that, I mean, what toy today can you say that about? Like literally any of these figures. What series you can say that is as out there as any of these series? So the last figure I have, the last carded figure I have, is something I'm sure literally most of you will remember. And it was one of the very first and few climate change cartoons. And I'm sure all of you who remember it is like, oh my god, I know what he's talking about. So basically, Captain Planet and the Planeteers, the story is basically the spirit of the earth has fallen asleep for thousands of years, wakes up, and sees the damage we have done to planet Earth, and decides the only way to save the planet is to summon 5 teenagers and give them power. Oh my god, the Power Rangers. So each of these teenagers actually came from different countries. We had Wheeler from United States, basically New York, white kid, red hair, which I got me on that one, but he had a New York accent. He had the power of fire. Wami from Africa with the power of earth, and it was a black teen, and he did have a very distinct accent. I don't think it was an African accent, but I'm not sure. We had a Asian representative that was Gi. Her power was water. And we had I guess European, but technically not, because her name was Linka and she was Russian. And her power was wind. And then, of course, we had Mati, who somehow did not have an accent, but he was from the South America with the power of heart. And when they combined their powers, they created a superhero named Captain Planet that was basically unstoppable except for toxic things. But he would get his powers from the sun. Oh my god, Superman. The main part of the show was trying to teach kids about global warming, about trying to save the planet, recycling, what can happen if we don't take care of the planet. And the rogue gallery for Captain Planet was insane. So they had a human pig-like character, hoggish greedily. I don't think he was a pig, but a lot of... So he wasn't a pig, but honestly, I don't know, because I'm pretty sure the nose was a pig and the ears was a pig. But he was one of the standout characters. I think he was literally about 6'4". I would not guess the weight, but I would guess maybe 400 or 500 pounds. Very big man. Pretty frightening to a teenager. He also had a sidekick, Rigger. There was a character that was a mutated human rat, villainous scum. There was a character that was... I really don't know what he was. But his power was radiation, Duke Nukem. The best thing about Duke Nukem was he was yellow, that looked very cemented, had a red mohawk, but he wore Hawaiian shirts and shorts. Like I said, insanely weird. They did have a short, dumpy guy. I don't know what his name was. Was that Scum? A tall, skinny guy that was a billionaire. Plunder. He also had a sidekick. I forget what the sidekick's name is. Then there was the mad scientist of the group, Dr. Blight. She had a sidekick named Mal, which was a AI. Pretty insane. She was a computer specialist, but also a scientist. She was pretty hot looking until you moved her hair, which left a huge scar. And I don't think it was that bad, but out of all the villains, she was literally the worst. Like, she generated authoritarianism, hate, and just pure rage. So, I had to pick her up. Yes, that's how she looked in the cartoon. Like I said, pretty hot until you moved and saw that. But even after that, it was her personality that was the most frightening part of her. So we have Captain Planet, Wheeler, Guami, Mati, Verminous Scum, Dr. Blight, Duke Nukem. Little Bile, little Sendaway, the power is yours, usually how they ended the show. The theme song was very memorable, and it was basically telling the story. The summoning of the hero, again memorable, but at the same time very repetitive. Because all you heard was, then let our powers combine. Earth, fire, wind, water, heart. Go planet. It just... However, it did makes very memorable series. Because of what the series itself tackled. And I completely understand people would be looking at me and saying, how can a series about climate change and global warming be memorable? So the first episode was just to build stuff. But it was Hoggish, Greedly, and Rigger attacking a animal sanctuary with this huge drilling machine, and all the animals getting oil and destroying the environment. But there were episodes where Plunder was trying to sell washing machines to a village in Africa that has never seen a washing machine. And then, of course, he had to sell energy to make the washing machine work. Them creating a giant god to scare the villagers. There were a lot of the old school cartoons were very hard hitting. So there was several two-part episodes in Captain Planet. One is where the alien god came down and gave the Planeteers gauntlets that were pretty much their power to try to basically get them to fight each other and destroy the planet in the process. One episode where the villains stole the Planeteers' ring, made evil clones of the rings, and created Captain Pollution, which was basically Captain Planet, except His skin wasn't blue, it was tan like a human. His hair was red, but it looked like Captain Planet. He had several botches that looked like mud on his face. Captain Planet's symbol, except the earth was cracked and it was red. The greatest part of it was his accent was a California surfer dude. So it literally it was a comical version. But the idea of making evil rings was insane. I think so. The best parts of the series to me, I think, was a 2-part episode where Wheeler, Duke Nukem, and Dr. Blight gets trapped in a ice thing where Dr. Blight was trying to send Duke Nukem back to stop the Planeteers from getting the rings. So she sends Wheeler back because Wheeler doesn't want to die. He stops himself from getting the fire ring, which stops the other Planeteers from ever existing. And then they bring him back, and the world is worse off than anything you could imagine. That was a very deep and dark story. The other story that literally, for me, especially in a lot of the series, was the drug stories. So C.O.P.S handled the drug story very well and different. Kind of different. They didn't push the drugs, the villains, the crooks. They were trying to rob a blimp that came in that had the drugs in it. And what Berserko, the nephew of the Big Boss, accidentally drops into the drugs and overdoses, sort of. Big Boss never wanted anything to do with drugs until Berserko fell in, decided to help the cops stop the drugs, and it was just a cop and crook trying to stop the drug lord from running, and it was just every team trying to stop him, only for him to run into the hospital where Berserko is and meet Berserko. G.I. Joe's drug episode was unfortunately in the Dick series, but it made sense because that's when the Hitman came out and the Headhunters. In the cartoon, Hitman was his own thing, separate from Cobra. In the universe, however, he is part of Cobra. So in the cartoon, it was basically Falcon, Duke's nephew started doing drugs. A Crimson Guard trooper's sister started doing drugs. They both ended up in the same hospital. The Crimson Guard talked to Cobra Commander into helping G.I. Joe stop the drugs by implanting the idea that the druggie has to have a lot of weapons and a lot of money hidden. Personally, I think the Dick era was very kid-friendly compared to the early 2 seasons and the movie. I would have loved to see what the original team and original production company would have done with a drug storyline. But with Captain Planet, Villainous Scum creates this toxic drug that's very addicted and literally takes effect within minutes. Linka's brother starts using it, which in turn makes the Planeteers come. Scum shoots Linka with it, so she starts wanting more drugs. And they literally talk about the idea of addiction, how it works on the mentality, the desperation, and the withdrawal, and the effects of withdrawal, as well as the effects of the addiction. And it was a very well put storyline for a TV cartoon series. But yeah, this is insane. Oof. To actually get all of these retro characters. Like I said, I'm still trying to get more retro characters. Or retro toys. I do want the Bionic 6 Scarab. The main villain from Mummies Alive. The main villain from Centurions. Like, literally, I have a list of old characters I would love to get, at least just one from each series. Tex Hex, Overlord from Black Star. But I'm definitely happy. Little by little, things are coming together. So these will be hung. These will be part of the villains shelf I'm making. Let's check it out. So, of course, still have my G.I. Joes. Unfortunately, a lot of these things don't hold. So I put Captain Power next to Hakaido, my Predators, Darth Vader. There is one more thing I want here. I can't think of it right now. Captain Blight, I'm thinking. Or Captain Blight, Dr. Blight. Mummy's alive. If I can get the card, it will be under there. James Bond Jr. Chases scum around the world. Skeleton Warriors. And Bison, Big Boss, talking strategy. Hopefully I can get Doctor, put him back there. Star Wars Black. I don't know if I want to keep him here. Got Turtles of Grayskull, Shredder, talking with... Yeah, you can see how small this guy Commander's characters are. And then, of course, the Aerator characters is probably to his waist. So as you can see, I have still a few more spaces to go. Got enough for one more big character back there. A couple more figures. Probably 5 more villains. It's coming along. Definitely a lot of my retro villains will be here. Then, of course, the Power Rangers, Gargoyles. I might switch this around, I'm not sure. Funkos. And then G.I. Joe Classified. So if you guys have any ideas of villains, definitely want Overlord, Tex Hex. Like I said, I'm looking into the villains, trying to fill up who I want, with what I want. Would love to hear you guys of who your favorite bad guys for each series is. Hopefully some of these brought back your nostalgia. That's the point. I know it's been a very long video. So with that, thanks for watching. Take care. Be safe. You know, there's definitely was one of my favorite villains for a series that I really didn't care for. Talk to you guys soon. We still gotta do the G.I. Joe unboxing, the Massiverse unboxing. Hopefully, we'll have a toy hunt. There's stuff I need to pick up. Unfortunately, not toys. Couple books. But in the meantime, aloha.